Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today, Soft Serve, using soft skills to enhance communication with colleagues and improve service to teens. Today's webinar will be presented by Jennifer Velasquez. This is Nicole Gibby Mungia, and I'm the Program Officer for Continuing Education for YALSA. And before we get started, I'd just like to review a few features of our webinar software. Throughout the webinar, we'll be communicating with each other via chat. At any time during the discussion, you may submit your questions to Jennifer using the chat box, which is located on the left-hand side of her screen. And she will make every attempt to answer the questions as they come in or as they fit into the flow of the discussion. If we run out of time to answer a question, don't worry, we'll follow up with everyone with an answer. And if you would prefer to not see the chat box during the webinar, you may click on the full screen button, which is located on the upper right-hand side of your screen. That will eliminate the chat and attendee list boxes. And to undo the full screen view, just click on that same button again. Located at the top of your screen in the middle, you should see an image of a person with her hand raised. If you click on the arrow next to the image of the person, you'll see that you have a variety of options, which include raising your hand, laughing, applauding, agreeing, or disagreeing. If at any point you experience audio issues, just type into the chat box to let me know, and I'll work with you to resolve them. Following today, you will receive a link to the webinar recording and the PowerPoint slides. And if you'd like to receive a certificate of participation, just send me a quick email following the webinar, and I'll be happy to send that along to you, and I will put my email address in the chat box. So now, with great pleasure, I turn it over to Jennifer.
Hi, everybody. This is Jennifer Velasquez. I'm speaking to you from beautiful San Antonio, Texas today, and I'm so pleased to be doing this webinar for YALSA. I am a proponent of YALSA, and I think that professional development is so important, so I applaud you all for being here today. We're going to talk about soft skills today. And one of the things I'm hoping we can do is really have a conversation and even take that conversation out of this space afterwards. So if you want to continue this conversation, we can do that by using this hashtag on Twitter, SoftServeYA. And I'll be checking that. And we can keep the conversation going that way. The first thing I'd love to know is about you. I've had a chance to talk to some of you before we started today, but I'd love to just sort of take the temperature of the room by having you respond to a poll question. And the question is, who are you? Who are you people? And if you could take a moment just to answer this, you'll see the results as we move along. Are you a teen services librarian? That's what it says on your business card. Are you an administrator or a director, a manager? Are you a generalist? So you consider yourself just a public service person and you may serve teens in the course of your duty. Is your title something that doesn't say teen, but your other duties as required as you doing teen programming or teen services? Or are you a group of people that may be a group of people of teen services? So it looks like we've got responses from everybody, and we have, good, we've got everyone accounted for. So the majority of us today are teen services librarians. We've got a couple of administrators, so I'll have to temper my disparaging remarks about directors. And we've got a generalist and someone with other duties as required. So really a nice mix of people in our poll today. In our room today. Now let's see, I'm going to do end poll, end poll. Okay. And thank you. And the poll went away. Fantastic. Okay. So what we're talking about is something that I think each teen services person has experienced in the course of their career. And I was having a conversation just the other day with a friend, and we were talking about how sometimes teen services people don't do a very good job translating the things that we know on an instinctive level into some format that we can have our managers or our coworkers, our community partners or even other patrons of the library understand, and how it's so important for us to be able to articulate that passion for teen services in a positive, constructive way so that we can avoid conflict that can sometimes come um, just by being a teen services person. So we want to talk about promoting understanding with ourselves and our colleagues, and also developing skills to help us be diplomatic when we talk to our coworkers who may not have teen spirit or may not be teen friendly. So we're going to talk about this in terms of soft skills. And the Department of Labor says that soft skills are a set of personality traits. They're social graces, communication skills, personal habits, friendliness, optimism, teamwork, critical thinking, and language that characterize relationships within the workplace. So that's the kind of worker that you are, the way that you do things. And that's in contrast to hard skills. And hard skills are occupational skills that you get through training or education that provided to an individual. So an individual to perform an actual job. So that would be things in library land like how to catalog a book or how to do database searches. So to contrast that with how things are done, which might be soft skills, these are the things, the skills that are the duties that are actually done. And as you can imagine, soft skills are hard to measure because they're more subtle, and it's really more art than science. And in teen services, we talk a lot about taking nothing for granted, taking nothing for granted. And when I say that, I mean, we have an understanding as teen services people that when teenagers walk into our library, we don't have any sort of expectation that they necessarily know how to use the catalog, or even that they may not even know what they're looking for necessarily. So we are really good at not taking those things for granted. And what I want to really stress today is talking about how we shouldn't take anything for granted when it comes to our colleagues as well. I think that because we're teen services people, and on an instinctive level, we understand and know how to serve teens, that we have an expectation that everyone that we work with might be in that same situation. And they're simply not. We know that some of us have just an almost supernatural ability to communicate with teens and sort of pitch things to the level that a teen can understand, to make a teen feel welcome and comfortable in the library setting. But that really is a skill that some of our colleagues, they're just not going to have it. And how it's our role really to help them improve their service to teens. And one of the things that I really want to talk about is having the expectations that we have of teens and the expectations that we have of our colleagues, and how they really are tied together, and how expectations can really translate into trouble for us. So, if we're working with teenagers and we're in situations where, we're hoping they like a particular program, or we're hoping they act a certain way in the library, we really set ourselves up for failure. And I think we set ourselves up for failure when we have these expectations of our colleagues as well. And when we're working with colleagues, we know that conflicts can arise because some of our colleagues can think that what we're doing as teen services people, what we're doing related to programming or even collection, draws teens into the library, and that may not be something that they think is necessarily a positive thing. So how do we apply those soft skills to really the two facets of the state that teens or colleagues can be in when they're working with us in the library? So, when you're working with teens, that sometimes when when situations are uncomfortable or behaviors of teens aren't optimal, we can put that down to two things, really. And stay with me for a second on this. We can say that teens have a lack of experience when it comes to being in the library or to be in a public place. That a trip to the library may represent, for teens, sort of a first foray into the public setting, without a parent. So, a 15 or a 16-year-old may take themselves to the library in a way that a 5-year-old doesn't. And it could be one of the first times that they're visiting a place independently. So they may lack experience about what's right behavior-wise in public. And what I love to say to teens that are misbehaving is, you just act right. Just act right. So you can sort of put that non-optimal behavior down to lack of experience, or you can put that behavior down to sort of a reaction that's based on fear, because the library is a strange place. They don't know what the protocol is. Library anxiety is a real thing, and sometimes the things that we do in the library actually precipitates more library anxiety. And that fear or discomfort or awkwardness that a teen may feel walking into a library can manifest itself as these behaviors that we would rather not see. And what I'd like to say today is that, in that spirit of not taking anything for granted and of having realistic expectations of our colleagues, that those same things, I think, are manifest in our colleagues who are having trouble serving teens. They may actually, like on the soft side, lack skill or capacity to serve teens. So they may not have the skill that we have as teen services people to sort of modulate and regulate the way they communicate with teens, the way they might with a child. When you see a child, there are all of these visual cues that tell you that you're dealing with a child. It's more difficult to do that when you're dealing with a teenager. A teenager, a 17-year-old with 5 o'clock shadow, you may not know where to pitch yourself. And this is something where, we certainly can help our colleagues understand that there are skills that can be developed to better serve teens. And then on the not soft side of this, staff can also deal with that sort of anxiety. And it's not necessarily library anxiety. It can be an anxiety about working with teens. And this is very, very complicated stuff. And I think that we don't talk about this in a way that really transcends a gut level, because it's a hard conversation to have. And, in many situations, the teen services person at a location, you're the advocate for teen services, and you're put in a situation where you're kind of the lone wolf for teen services as well. And it can be a very, very difficult mountain to climb, because in society, it's almost accepted to disparage teenagers. And I'm sure, and we're going to get into a couple of service models here, but I'm just wondering in the chat space if it would be possible for you just to indicate in some way if you've had experiences like this. Feel free to share. If you want to just use a couple of words, that's fine. If you want to write longer, that's great as well. But when we're dealing with sort of that manifestation of this societal thing that can happen, where it's okay to disparage teens, or it's almost reinforced in some cultures, in our library culture, that you can have staff members who sort of exude a non-friendly, non-welcoming atmosphere when it comes to serving teens. And that's where we really get set up for conflict, because on the one hand, we are these teen services people. We may have teen on our business card, and we're in a service landscape, a service atmosphere that makes our patrons feel unwelcome. And our first impulse may be to react in a negative way about that. And I think that that's human nature. And I want to just tell you, I had a teen services librarian in my department a number of years ago she was an outstanding teen services librarian. Her instincts were very good. She was doing wonderful programming. She had a great knowledge of our teen fiction collection. But where she had problems was communicating with some of our adult services staff members who had that sort of feeling that they could say things about our patrons, or security guards that could say things about our patrons. And she would get very angry, and it was very stressful for her. But she never sweetened the situation. She never got to a point where she could even have a conversation with people who were saying these things. But I want to talk about how to sort of make that transition with our colleagues when we're talking about these two levels, that sort of lack of capacity level and the fear and hostility level. So, when we have teams that misbehave, there are consequences. There's that patron code of conduct that we can rely upon to make sure that everyone's complying and that we're keeping the library a safe and welcoming place. But the same isn't necessarily true for us with our colleagues. So the consequences of that negative behavior that's exhibited by teens or exhibited by our colleagues, the consequences are different. And the consequences are different because of that sort of power thing that we're talking about. The hierarchy that happens between adults and teenagers, that sort of control that comes into play when adults and teenagers mix. And it can make for situations escalating that don't necessarily need to escalate. So I want to ask a second poll question right now. So give me a second to figure this out. Pods and polls and service climate. Okay. I'd like you, and I can't tell who's answering what. So I just would really encourage you to be honest about this. That, do you feel like you work in a climate where everyone is on board with teen services? Do you work in a service climate where the majority of people get it? There's a mix of love and hate, or it's open season, there's open hostility. Okay. I see the majority of you say that there's a mix of love and hate. And I think that that's probably true in general. I know that there are some locations that have that sense of open hostility, but I think the majority of us would say that it's love and hate. And I see Jesse in the chat is saying less hate and more disinterest. And I think that you're saying that very well. I really do. And Carla is adding, those who get it, and those who don't just kind of ignore it. Exactly. So we're talking about that same theme of disinterest. And I think that if you can imagine being a retailer who has a disinterest in customers, that, I wish that we would think of ourselves more as a business sometimes, that teens choose to spend their out of school time, their discretionary time in the library. And, the way they may spend their discretionary funds at a retail location, and how we really can't afford as a service outlet to ignore those teens. And by ignoring, if you say you ignored, that's saying you're acknowledging that someone doesn't exist, something doesn't exist, and that's just not where we want to be. And Amy is writing that I have volunteers who don't particularly like teens in the library. That's an evening thing, but now I have teen volunteers who are awesome. Amy, that is fascinating, and we're going to get to talking about some strategies that we can use. Thank you for that segue, Amy. Some strategies that we can use, if I can end this poll, to sort of help. I'm going to just move it aside here. Um, go away, go away. Strategies that we can use to get our colleagues on board. So now we're not talking about people that necessarily have an overt hate or dislike of teens, but what we're talking about is really sort of maybe changing the mindset a little bit of people who are working that we're working with. So as you're saying, looking for those opportunities to humanize teens to librarians and librarians to teens. And I think it's so valuable to, if you're working, and I want to just say that these are insidious things. These are things that we need to be doing just the way we do frontline advocacy with the public. We need to be doing this sort of I don't know insidious advocacy with people that we work with who we recognize need to increase their team spirit a little bit. And one of those things is just getting our colleagues to see teens as human beings. And that sounds crazy and it sounds harsh, but I think that there is absolutely a reality to that. If they are allowed to cling to stereotypes about teens, that teens are loud and teens are disinterested in libraries, and they're allowed to make these generalizations, or those generalizations are sort of perpetuated in our organizations, the way to break that down is to introduce your teen-resistant colleague to maybe a teen regular or a teen volunteer. And it's difficult to hate an individual or dislike an individual or stereotype an individual the way it's easy to do that to a group of people. And so I think that making an effort to make that introduction and having it work both ways, because if the colleague is exuding a disinterest or a dislike of teens, that you're actually helping teens see the librarian, who maybe never smiles or never says hello, as a human being as well. So I would say that's a very important part of that advocacy that we have to do. And the other thing is, if you have teen, like Amy is saying, that if we have teen volunteers, I think it's very important to use them sort of as those people that can be the people that we're introducing our staff members to. So the teens are getting introduced to these volunteers. And part of the message that's in this advocacy is making sure that our colleagues and our managers see the benefit of having teens in our library. And it can be for something as simple as shelving books or helping to cut out stuff for story time, but that these are individual human beings, that their presence is a benefit to the library. And beyond that, I would say that, if there's teen programming that's going on, of course we want to have teens involved in the planning and implementation of that programming. But beyond that, we want to seize the opportunity to showcase the positive, good things that teens are doing in our library. We want to do that anyway, but as part of that insidious advocacy that we're that we're dealing with, if you get a photo in your local newspaper of teens doing something wholesome and fresh scrubbed at the library, you aren't just showcasing how awesome teens and teen services might be, but you're also adding to the kudos that your manager or your director may be experiencing in the community. So, that's a very tangible way to demonstrate that teens in the library have a value. And I almost hate to talk this way because I'm so used to speaking about things that are sort of outward facing, that talking about this sort of behind the scenes thing is, I think, different. And I really want to encourage you to be using your critical thinking skills and really strategizing when it comes to putting forward that teen services message. To be strategic about that, I think is so important, because if you're finding that teens and teen services are not accepted or celebrated in the organization, sometimes the best thing to do is to go outside of the organization and um, get your kudos there, because that puts the shine on your director. It puts the shine on your manager. And if you have partners that you're working with, to have them say that we value what's happening for teens translates into, we value teen services and we value teens. And so that helps really on a bigger scale shift the attitude and shift the message of teen services as an organization. And finally, um, I want to talk about modeling good teen services. And this is another one of those situations where, um, let's just say it, where we could be in situations where, because the population that we're tasked to serve can be marginalized, we can feel marginalized. And in the example that I used of my former staff member, we are, I think, uniquely positioned in this negative way to experience alienation in our organizations from our colleagues. And that can be overt or that can be subtle, but it can really be a stressful situation to be in. And so, what I would say is, to counter that, you've really got to put your game face on. And what I tell my staff is, the moment that we walk in the door, we are in professional mode. And who are our customers? Our customers are the teens that we serve in the teen services department. But we have internal customers as well. We have internal relationships as well that we've really got to cultivate, because we want to be known as a positive team. We want to function in the broader team in the library in a very positive way. And that means being a professional, smiling, and having that positivity that we need to move forward our teen services agenda. So we want to use positive language. We want to be optimistic. We want to be friendly. We really want to exemplify those soft skills. We want to put them to work. And so this, that when you're working with teens, you have a particular way of communicating with them. That the thing to do is to keep that calm, neutral face, because maybe again, this is one of their first forays, one of the first times they're talking to an adult outside of school or their family on their own. And um, and just to be really aware of the cues that we're sending to teens. I have a teen services person right now who, when he is helping a teen at the reference desk, he does this thing where he turns to the monitor when he's doing a search, and he's thinking, he's concentrating, and he tends to scowl a little bit when he does that. And teens are interpreting that as they're bothering him by asking a question. And that is just the opposite of what's going on. He is, so intense, and he wants to find information for them, but it's being translated in this different way. And I think we've got to be very aware of that when we're working with our colleagues as well. That the way to really help us and move teen services and teens forward in our organization is really to be aware of even those subtle cues that we're sending out when we're talking to our colleagues about teens and teen services. So, what I would propose is that we've got two service audiences. So when we're at the teen services desk, or I'm sorry, when we're at the reference desk, and I should ask this, are you guys, and if you would tell me this in the chat space, are you often, are you in a teen services room? So you're at a teen services desk where you talk to teens, or are you on a general sort of service desk? I would love to know that. I see you're all typing. Yay. Okay. I'm going to wait just a second here because this may change how I pitch this. Multiple attendees are typing. Okay. Youth services is all together. Oh, don't get me started on youth services. And Brenda. Okay, Brenda, if you'd want to explain. Okay, adult reference desk. Team department doesn't have a desk. Reference. Okay, hanging out at the, gotcha. Wonderful. Okay. So this is what I would say, that when you're at the service desk, and this is all part of, you know, being professional, having that game face on, that when we're at that service desk, the public obviously is our audience. So they come up to us, we interact with them, we want to deliver outstanding customer service. We want to make sure that we're sending all of those sort of welcoming cues that we want to send. We want to ask open-ended questions, all of those things that we know how to do. And I would also say that I'd propose that we have a second audience when we're serving, and that's the staff person who is sitting next to us. And this is really an opportunity when we have a teen service or a library service person or colleague sitting with us who's not necessarily teen friendly, or maybe they're teen friendly, but they just don't get it when it comes to reference and readers advisory for teens, or how to pitch an interview, or how to even say hello to teens, that they are our second service audience. And part of this insidious advocacy that can go on happens right then, and it can happen in a very unstructured way. And so this is all down to improving service and improving the capacity of our colleagues, but doing it in a way that we're going to use our soft skills to do it. We're going to be outstanding communicators. We're going to be positive. We're going to be optimistic. We're going to be friendly. And we're going to do it to help improve our library team that helps us then improve library service. So the first thing we want to do is really model outstanding teen service behavior. And you know, this is one of those things that, again, teen services people tend to do this on an instinctive level and not really articulate the steps that they take and the strategies that they use. And what I would say is it's really important for us to be very aware of what is it that we do that works when we work with teenagers at the service desk, when we're doing a reference interview, when we're doing reader's advisory. What works? Unpack that for yourself. Really look at yourself and see how you can do that. And what I think is so important is to make an effort to engage your colleague while you're at the service desk and you're serving teens. And one of the things that I like to do, and I've done in the past, is sort of after the interview or after the reference question that I've had with the teen, recap it, almost do an instant replay with your colleague. And that sounds crazy. And I realize that sounds crazy when I say it. But this is one of those things that you just do. And you don't wait for a cue to say it's okay to do it or not. But try this. If you're sitting with a less than teen services friendly person, what I say is, so the interview is over, the teen has left the desk, there is no one waiting to be served, I'm just sitting there with my colleague. I will say to them, when that teen came in and asked me for a list of books on Japanese internment camps because they were writing a biography. I really had to get to a point where I could tell them that the word they wanted to use was bibliography, but I didn't want to make them feel stupid. So, we talked a little bit about how words sound the same, but they mean vastly different things. And I helped them with their bibliography. So, okay, so we know that in teen library user experience, and really anyone's library user experience, one of the things that creates library anxiety and creates a bad library experience for teens or anyone is the use of jargon and library practices that make people feel stupid. So, if you're sitting with a colleague that would lick their chops at the opportunity to tell the teen, you don't mean biography, you mean bibliography, you're then able to sort of give them a way to do a positive thing in the same situation. So you're modeling that good service behavior, and you are literally recapping what happened. You're doing an instant replay, a play-by-play of what's happening that is successful and an alternative to what they may be attempting to do. And then the last thing is really to offer to do training. And this is part of that advocacy as well, that if your manager may love the idea that you do training, or the manager may not love the idea that you're offering training. But I think that if there's a staff meeting, the staff meeting is a place to speak up and make sure your colleagues know what's going on in teen services. And I think that there's nothing wrong with embedding those sort of service tips into a quick recap or a quick report that's happening at a staff meeting. But I think that if there's a venue or a way, if there's a mechanism to actually deliver training, that it's really important for you to volunteer to do that, because that sends a couple of messages. That sort of reinforces your role as the teen services person, but perhaps more importantly, it reinforces that management, the manager, the director, or whomever, thinks it's important enough, that teen services is important enough, that you're actually going to do training about it, which then implies that there's an expectation that that training, the skill that's part of that training, is implemented for our customers. We love to say everybody serves teens, everybody serves teens. Well, everybody serves teens. Well, absolutely. And I think that is sort of a dig your heels in attitude that's important. But I think that along with that sort of attitude has to come not only friendliness, kindness, and teamwork, but it has to be us being willing to say more than just that thing, but to put our money where our mouth is, if you'll excuse the cliche, and offer to do training to improve the situation regarding our colleagues and their capacity to serve teens. Okay, I have one more kind of atmosphere thing I'd like to talk to you about. And tell me if you've ever experienced this. If you're the teen services person or you're the teen friendly person at your location, and you have adult services people or anyone, maybe someone who isn't comfortable serving teens necessarily, have you ever had them come and get you to work with a teen? I know that I've had that experience in my career where they come and get me. I'm not on desk, but my colleague comes to get me, and they may say something like, there's one of yours, there's one of yours at the desk, come and talk to them. And I actually was talking to a teen services librarian not too long ago, and this is a quote from them. It's not like teens speak a language only I can understand. She was very frustrated. But there was, another side to that. And the other side to that was, chances are we're going to get up and go, even if we're not on desk, we're going to go and see what the teen needs, because maybe we just cringe at the thought of that staff member dealing with teens. So we'll do it. I'll do it. Just so a teen doesn't have to talk to you, I'll do it. But I want to just propose sort of a way to handle this situation using soft skills, because that kind of abdication of responsibility in our colleagues is something that we shouldn't it shouldn't be tolerated. And so in that situation, what I would recommend doing is saying, okay, great. I'm on my way, and I'll be glad to get things started with the reference interview. And I would say, and I would be very conscious about using that word. We're going to help you get things started, not I'm going to get you started or whatever, because you're not going to personalize it. This isn't about your colleague. This is about the transaction that's about to happen. And we want to put to work some of those things that we talked about, some of those strategies that we talked about. We want to make introductions first thing. And I don't know if you do this with teens. I love to do this with teens, especially if I'm positive I've never seen them before, where I just say my name. Hi, I'm Jennifer. Hi, I'm Jennifer. And maybe they'll say their name, or maybe they won't. But what I would do in this situation is I would make sure that the colleague who is trying to abdicate their responsibility to serve teens is there with me, because I'm going to get things started with you and this teen customer. So making those introductions, I would introduce myself. I'm Jennifer, and this is my colleague, whatever their name is, because we want to start that process of humanization. And this is, frankly, more for the benefit of your colleague than the teen at this point. And then I would facilitate the interview. And that means as the teen patron is talking to me about what their needs are, why are they asking a question? What is it that they need? I would be couching my responses to the teen and the colleague at the same time. I would literally start to facilitate communication between these two people. And I may ask the question that the teen is asking me. I may ask that question to the staff person. So I am actually intercessing in this situation. Let's just do something stupid. So the teen asks, I'm looking for a copy of the blah, blah, blah book. Where can I find it? I would literally say to my colleague, where would we find a copy of the blah, blah, blah book? So I'm actually making my colleague sort of interact in this situation. They don't have to talk directly to the teen, because maybe it's not safe to do that yet. But I'm helping to facilitate the interview. So now I'm modeling the service behavior, because I'm going to act in my super teen capacity, but I'm going to absolutely draw my colleague into that situation. And at the end of the transaction, whatever that means, that the teen has the book or the question or the discrete bit of information they're looking for, when I would finish this up, what I would say is the most important part of this is, for everybody, is to sort of redirect and follow up. And that means you say to the teen, next time you come in, you can really ask any of us for help. Because now you're sending a message to your colleague that, yeah, look, you just served a teen. And you're also sending a message to the team that they can ask anybody. We're all here just to help you. And I really think that's a key component of this, is sending that message, reinforcing that message with our staff people, with our colleagues. Okay. I'm not sure what the next slide is. Let's just take a look. Oh, open chat and questions. So, I've spent about 45 minutes now talking and throwing out some ideas. And we wanted to make sure that at the end of my presentation, that we really had time for open chat and questions. So if you would like to share experiences that you've had, some techniques perhaps that you've used that have worked or perhaps have not worked, or asking any kinds of questions, I'll be glad to entertain them. I may answer them, or I may ask you guys to answer them, but I'll just throw it out there. And Jessie is typing. Thank you, Jessie. Oh, okay. Let's see. Oh, wow. Okay. Let me scroll down. Nicole, I'm mangling my chat thing. Here we go. Yeah, I totally I totally don't see anything. Okay. 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 Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. And I see that a number of you have teen spaces that are. I see that Brenda is saying that we have a teen room but no desk, and it's a small space. And I think that that's fairly typical. And I would really like to applaud you for not trying to shove a desk into a small teen space, because there's just no way that that sort of work desk is perceived as anything but an invasion of adults into a space. Nicole, I don't think we have any questions. Oh, here we go. Um, it says, I think there's still the idea that teen librarians are good with teens because we like the same things that they do or are perceived as younger than the other librarians. And Brenda says that she thinks that that's true. And I really think that librarians have this set of sort of stereotypical baggage that we're all handed when we get our MLSs, right? But I think that teen services librarians have a particular set of baggage that we're handed, when we take on the mantle of being teen services people. And, I know that I just hear this again and again, and I'm really glad that you've shared this with us, that we're sort of not taken seriously. And the perception is, you guys are just playing video games and reading comic books. This is not serious librarianship. And I think that goes back to the idea of being able to articulate a service mission and vision. So, on an instinctive level, we understand why we do those things. We understand the librarianness of that, the libraryness of video games and comic books. I'm going to pick on them. But what's really important for us, and it's vital, and it's our job to do this, and it's part of that advocacy that I'm talking about, is to be able to articulate to our coworkers and our managers why it's important, how that fits into basic library service. And one of the things that it really took me years to do was to get my director talking in terms of developmental assets, because he would sort of walk into, this isn't going to be available to the open public, right? I'm going to tell stories about my director. He would sort of walk into the teen center, and it looked like chaos. There's video gaming going on, and they're painting things, and it's loud, and there's music being played. And I would sort of see him, and he didn't have a negative reaction, but I could sort of see him trying to figure out, like, what the hell is going on here? And I thought, on a gut level, I know how this is helping teens developmentally and how it fits into a broader service mission and vision for the library. But my God, I better get on the ball and be able to articulate that, so that when the angry patron or the curmudgeonly colleague goes to him and complains that all those kids do is play video games, and by extension, that's all I do, right? Is I'm a facilitator of video gaming. And the next thing our program is cut. I need to be able to articulate how what we're doing absolutely fits into traditions, even if they're not traditional things. And so I absolutely get what you're saying. And and your comment about being younger, about teen services librarians being younger, I love it when I say to people, I'm a teen librarian, and they look at me like, oh, you poor woman. No, no, actually, you don't look like a teen librarian at all. Um, but speaking as a 50-year-old woman, that I think it's valuable to have a mix of young people and older people serving teens. I think that's beneficial for teens, and I think that that there's a you can say that there's a certain gravitas that a 50-year-old woman can bring to the role of teen services advocate that maybe a 25-year-old can't. But I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I think that a 25-year-old who looks like a teenager, who, blends in with them like Jane Goodall and understands their interests and needs, that they have that same responsibility to articulate the way teen services and what teen services does fits into a bigger picture of library service. Okay, I'm going to say young at heart, absolutely young at heart, and immaturity. And Amy just turned 50. Woo! Awesome. Of course your children think you're lame. You're their mom. Their friends think you're cool, so you're doing something right. I love it. I love it. And that just goes to show, that we really are that person in the community who's not a teacher, who's not a family member, who can be that adult that listens to them and acknowledges and doesn't judge, and really takes on their interests and translates them, puts the libraryness into their interests and sets them free. But at the same time, having that conversation with our colleagues and with our administration so that they understand that what we're doing really is beyond, playing video games and reading comic books. What else can we talk about, friends? Anything else you'd like to throw out there? I want to encourage you all to use the hashtag on Twitter if you are Twitter people. I've also included on this slide my information. So if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, I would love that. And also, if you want to email me, that is my email address. I am always happy to, I love talking to librarians about teen services. It is my passion. And I want to tell you, I get calls, I would say on a weekly basis from people in all parts of the country, out of the blue, who have teen service issues or concerns or situations that they want to talk about. I love to talk to people. I love to talk to people on the phone. So please, if you want to set up a time to talk on the phone, or if you want to have an email conversation, I love to do that. I absolutely love to do that. I think it's important, particularly for teen services people, to really turn to each other and support each other. And that's why organizations like YALSA are so important, because you, as I said, you may feel like you're the lone wolf in your organization, and it can be very stressful. So I think finding those allies, converting and advocating for those allies at your location is so important, but also turning to professional organizations where you can really get advice from people who may be in the same position or in the same situation, I think is so incredibly vital. So I'm going to just pause for another moment to see if anyone has anything else, and then I'll turn things over to Nicole.
Hi, everyone. Please feel free to weigh in with any lingering questions that you may have, and as well, following the webinar, if any questions come up and you'd like to contact Jennifer or myself, you may certainly do that. And I think there was a slide with some resources. I'm not sure if you...
Oh, that's right. Absolutely. Yeah. And when you guys get this copy of the PowerPoint, or you can view this copy of the PowerPoint, what I put on here was, soft skills are kind of slippery. Like I referred to the Department of Labor's list of soft skills. But it's kind of slippery because if you read different lists or different professions, they have different soft skills that they talk about. So what I've done on this resource list is really concentrated on that notion of soft skills themselves. And what you'll see are the top and the bottom resource are really sort of general businessy resources that talk about soft skills, and the two in the middle are specific to libraries. So the wonderful Michael Stevens, in his office hours column for Library Journal, took on soft skills, I think, last year. And then you'll also see the Metropolitan New York Library Council talks about soft skills, what employers want and don't want, which is really interesting. So those are links. I just checked them this morning. There's still live links. So you should be able to, if you're interested, to look at some additional soft skills information. That'll help you. And if I can just leave you with one closing thought, and this is, again, that thing of being a professional, putting our game face on. We know that when we talk to teens, and teens aren't necessarily behaving the way we would like them to in the library setting, we use fairness, we use firmness and kindness. And I would say that that same strategy will work with even the most anti-teen of your colleagues, or those, and I know that you guys didn't articulate that you had necessarily hostility, you had that love-hate or ignore situation. I think that fairness, firmness, and kindness will help you help your colleagues be less inclined to ignore the teens that are such a vital, vital part of our service population. So thank you, friends. Thank you so much. And again, please feel free to stay in touch with me. I love to hear from you, and just really feel free. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. We really appreciate your participation, and we will send a link to the recording and slides following the webinar. So have a great rest of your day.